JICA Lecture Series of Japanese Development Experience to Date, in line with JICA Global Agenda. Cooperation Strategies by Development Issues.
Japan's experience in peaceful state building and post-war disaster reconstruction. Experience of post-war disaster reconstruction. Today's lecturer will be Professor Shinoda Hideaki from Tokyo University of Foreign Studies.
My name is Hideaki Shinoda, and I am a professor at the Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. What lessons can be learned from Japan's experience of peacebuilding and post-conflict reconstruction? This lecture will focus on how Japan has achieved post-war and post-disaster reconstruction after experiencing wars and natural disasters. In particular, I will introduce the examples of Hiroshima City, which was devastated by the atomic bombing in 1945, and Higashi-Matsushima City, which suffered a large number of casualties from the earthquake and a tsunami caused by the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake. Japan's experience in post-war and post-disaster reconstruction shows that leaders and civil servants have their own roles to play, so it is important for the government and the residents to work together with a common vision to recover from conflict and disaster and build a peaceful country. In May 2016, then United States President Barack Obama visited Hiroshima. Prior to the visit, it had been said that there would be opposition to a visit to Hiroshima by a president of the United States, the country that dropped the atomic bombs. However, when President Obama actually visited Hiroshima, its people welcomed him with open arms, and many gave him a warm welcome. People from different countries often ask whether the people of Hiroshima hate the US. Certainly, depending on the person. The residents of Hiroshima are at different stages and are going through different processes in terms of forgiveness and reconciliation. So why did they warmly welcome President Obama? What was the process of Hiroshima's recovery from the damage of the atomic bomb, and how did it come to be known as a city of peace? At the time of the Meiji Restoration and the start of modernization in the 19th century, Hiroshima was a region of Japan where disenfranchised samurai and poor farmers existed in discontent. Sadaaki Senda, Hiroshima Prefecture's first governor, attempted to solve the problem by creating land through large-scale reclamation projects. However, the land created by the new reclamation work was not suitable for agriculture, and Senda moved out of Hiroshima in disappointment, leaving the prefecture in enormous debt. However, when the Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1894, the modern port of Ujina, which Senda had built as part of his reclamation work, came to the attention of the government. Hiroshima Station was the westernmost station on Japan's railroad network at that time. In just 2 weeks, a railroad connecting Hiroshima Station and the Ujina port, which was only 5 kilometers away, was constructed as a national project. When the Sino-Japanese War began, soldiers, weapons, and supplies were transported by railroad to Ujina port and then by ship from the port to the battlefield. The imperial headquarters, the imperial diet, and even the emperor moved their bases to Hiroshima. Suddenly, Hiroshima came to serve as the capital of Japan for over a year. This not only elevated Hiroshima's political status, but also led to flourishing military-related industries. Hiroshima, which became known as the military capital, was also able to solve the problems of the disgruntled samurai and poor farmers. The process of solving Hiroshima's problems in the 19th century was in line with the policies of the central government, which had adopted a militaristic policy. An atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and another on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. The death toll from these bombs was estimated at 140,000 in Hiroshima and 70,000 in Nagasaki. Hiroshima was one of the leading military cities in Japan at the time, but the atomic bomb destroyed its socio-economic infrastructure. Even just after the bombing, surviving officials and others continued to work in bandages for the rescue and relief of residents. 3 days after the bombing, some tram services resumed operation, and 4 days later, water was shared by water pumps. However, for the reconstruction of the city post-1945, when the central government that promoted militaristic policies had disappeared, there could be no reconstruction of Hiroshima as a military city. The reconstruction of Hiroshima required fundamentally new ideas, starting with the creation of a new vision. Under Shinzo Hamai, who was the first democratically elected mayor of Hiroshima in 1947, the city underwent a major shift in strategy. Hamai acknowledged that new ideas were needed for the recovery of Hiroshima. This was because the old ways of solving problems would not be able to cope with the problems of the city's new situation. Therefore, he set forth a vision that Hiroshima could become a peace memorial city precisely because the atomic bomb had fallen, and he sought the cooperation of the occupation authorities and central government politicians and officials. General Douglas MacArthur, the supreme commander of the Allied forces, refused Hamai's predecessor's request for financial assistance, saying that the US could not support Hiroshima to ease its conscience. However, when Hamai asked for no financial assistance but rather spiritual support in making Hiroshima a peace city, MacArthur promised to give his full support. He also instructed the occupied Japanese government to cooperate with the city of Hiroshima. In 1949, the Diet passed the Hiroshima Peace Memorial City Construction Act. A referendum was held to realize this law. In 1949, with 61% voter turnout, 91% in favor, Japan's first special law for a local city was enacted. This also led to the introduction of a major development project in Hiroshima, which also provided Hamai with financial resources. Initially, residents sometimes expressed dissatisfaction with the government, saying that they did not want parks or roads but food, housing, and jobs. Due to the unpopularity of Reconstruction, Hamai lost the mayoral election once in 1955. However, he was reinstated in 1959 and led the reconstruction efforts of Hiroshima as a city of peace throughout his tenure as mayor until 1967. The construction of the 100-meter-wide main street, which citizens initially said must be a runway for fighter planes to take revenge on the US, otherwise they didn't understand it, and the Peace Memorial Park, which has a cenotaph at the center with a famously controversial inscription, "We shall not repeat the evil," took time, but they were the catalyst for the city's reconstruction. The preserved A-bomb dome, the subject of much controversy, was later registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and became an important tourist asset for the town. The lives of citizens improved, and the A-bomb slums that could be seen everywhere disappeared. However, it took several decades for this to happen, and it was more than 30 years after the end of the war that the last public apartments were built to absorb the illegal residents of the A-bomb slums. Hamai had already died by then, but the vision he so bravely laid out lives on today. Reconstruction required a tremendous effort on the part of citizens, but it was Hamai's vision to rebuild and restore Hiroshima as a peace memorial city that propelled it in one direction. Today, the people of Hiroshima are very proud of their achievements, so they welcome a US president who respects the city's great record of reconstruction. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not the only cities affected by the war. Air raids on the Japanese mainland intensified from around 1944, and by the end of the war, on August 15, 1945, more than 200 cities across the country had been affected, with more than 500,000 civilians killed and 9.5 million people affected. Tokyo was no exception and suffered repeated air raids, with the March 10, 1945 air raid reportedly resulting in civilian casualties of 80,000, possibly more than 100,000 in a single day. Japan's post-war reconstruction experience was a sweeping nationwide initiative. In November 1945, the state established the War Reconstruction Agency and enacted the Special Urban Planning Law, which enabled local cities such as Nagoya, Sendai, Kobe, and Hiroshima to achieve reconstruction in a manner close to the plan. On the other hand, the state decided to exclude districts that had been rezoned in the past. Tokyo, which had undergone extensive rezoning during the Great Kanto earthquake of September 1, 1923, would be excluded. Tokyo, therefore, developed the Tokyo Metropolitan War Reconstruction Plan, which further expanded on the reconstruction plan for the Great Kanto earthquake and undertook reconstruction efforts. In reality, financial and administrative constraints prevented the reconstruction plan from easily taking shape, and priority was given to securing housing and other forms of civilian stability. But Tokyo's reconstruction plan was a continuation of the Great Kanto earthquake reconstruction plan and has led to the Tokyo of today. Next, Let's look at the recent case of the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011. On March 11, 2011, Japan was struck by a massive earthquake with its epicenter off the Pacific coast of the Tohoku region. With a magnitude of 9.0, it was the largest earthquake ever recorded in Japan. In addition to the earthquake, the tsunami generated by the quake caused extensive damage to the Tohoku region and many other areas in eastern Japan. The earthquake left some 18,000 people dead, 2,500 missing, and at one point, 470,000 living as evacuees. A nuclear accident also occurred in Fukushima. In Higashi Matsushima City, which had a population of 42,000 before the disaster, 1,110 people were killed and 24 people were missing. 65% of the urban area was inundated by the tsunami, and 97% of houses in the city were damaged. The city, which upholds citizen collaborative town planning, has promoted resident-led reconstruction. It has experience from before the earthquake in making decisions through consultations between city officials and residents, and this was put to good use in the earthquake reconstruction process. Mr. Takahashi, a former city employee, is one man who supported the reconstruction of Higashi Matsushima City.
When Higashi Matsushima City was formed by merging two towns, we wanted to build a truly collaborative community for citizens. The initiative was the main pillar for the original construction plan for the new city. Under this policy, the community would help each other and not depend solely on city administration.
The city has created a framework for self-help and mutual help solutions in areas that are difficult for public services to reach, and has worked on the establishment of civic centers, which are staffed by local self-governing organizations representing citizens. Efforts made prior to the disaster have worked in recovery from the disaster. In Higashi Matsushima City, mutual help played a major role with the residents from areas that suffered relatively little damage, helping those in the coastal areas that were hardest hit. In addition, each citizen acted with a sense of self-help whereby they did what they could for themselves. At the same time, Higashi Matsushima City drew up recovery and reconstruction guidelines 1 month after the disaster. The guidelines clearly set out the government's basic stance of proceeding with recovery and reconstruction while building a common understanding between the public and private sectors. Based on this basic stance, the Reconstruction and Community Development Plan was drawn up. The opinions of local residents were largely reflected in the development of the plan. We asked Mr. Takahashi about the creation of the Reconstruction Plan.
Reconstruction started with our asking residents for their views on a reconstruction plan. We didn't have some official behind a desk deciding where people would relocate. We started consulting collaborative organizations focused primarily on the members of the Voluntary Council and members of the board for the relocation agreement. We'd ask, "What do you think?" We'd consult them and they knew things. So the word started spreading to a certain degree. We'd get information like, "That area is a candidate," or "I know that landowner's character," or "That place doesn't have water," or "Roads could pass through here." There were so many people who knew so much more than we did. Their ideas were definitely better than ours because they already had candidate sites in mind.
Thus, it can be said that what was important in Japan's post-war and post-disaster reconstruction was that the government and the residents worked together with a common vision, and that residents also united with each other with the awareness that they were the main players in the reconstruction process. The experiences of Hiroshima and Higashi-Matsushima City are being passed on to people in conflict-affected countries and regions. Many foreign government officials from conflict-affected countries have visited Hiroshima to learn about the Japanese experience.
What I learned from Hiroshima last year that I came for a study tour is the system of governance of the Hiroshima Prefecture. The way and manner communities are carried along by the local government. We are still battling with the conflict, but there are a lot of issues that we have seen by bringing in the community to help in and seeing how the insurgency can be reduced to the barest minimum.
In post-war and post-disaster reconstruction, the shared vision of government officials and residents, the leadership of government officials, and the cooperation of residents supported recovery. What is important is that the government officials and the residents were thinking about the future, and even in difficult circumstances, never gave up.
Japan has modernized from a non-Western background to establish a free, democratic, prosperous, and peace-loving nation. In this sense, Japan is one of the best development models for the developing countries and regions today. In addition, Japan has contributed to economic growth in many developing countries, especially in Asia. Therefore, we would like to share with you Japan's unique experience of modernization, which is different from Western countries, and cooperation for developing countries through this video material. This video series provides a comprehensive summary by development issue according to the lineup of JICA's cooperation strategy called the JICA Global Agenda.